Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the fallout from this programme's investigation into Facebook data harvesting is continuing to be felt across the globe. Tonight, Lindsay Hilsum is in Kenya, where the strategy firm that harvested the data, Cambridge Analytica, boasted of helping swing last year's presidential election. And Siobhan Kennedy is in the United States, where Facebook's shares have plunged a further 3% after US regulators announced they were launching an investigation into potential privacy violations by the social media giant. So let's turn first to California and Siobhan. Siobhan, what's going on there?
Well, Kathy, yet more disastrous news for Facebook today. It was only a week ago, wasn't it, that the Cambridge Analytica story broke. And yet in that time, Facebook has lost about, including today's share price fall, about 70 billion worth of its market value. The latest share price tumble today, driven, as you said there, by the US regulator, the Federal Trade Commission, announcing a formal investigation into Facebook around the data privacy scandal. Now, the context of that, back in 2011, Facebook signed what's called a consent decree, a formal agreement, if you like, with the FTC, whereby it had to inform its users when and how their personal data was being used by third parties like Cambridge Analytica. Yet here we have this scandal that saw almost 50 million users' profiles allegedly being misused, and Facebook seemingly didn't make that public, and nor did it inform any of the users themselves. Now the regulator clearly thinks that's serious enough a potential violation to launch a formal inquiry.
Indeed, but what's Facebook saying to all this then?
Well, Kathy, it has repeated really only what it said in an earlier statement last week. Let me read it to you. We remain strongly committed to protecting people's information, Facebook said. We appreciate the opportunity to answer any questions the FTC may have. But consider this, Kathy, if the FTC regulator does find against Facebook, it could face fines of up to $40,000 per violation per day, which, let me tell you, would equate to billions worth of dollars, and that on top of the share price fall. So all in all, really, in summary, a real reckoning for this seemingly invincible social media giant. Kathy, back to you.
Thanks very much, Siobhan. Well, when we investigated Cambridge Analytica, the company's bosses boasted of helping swing last year's presidential election in Kenya. Now we have further evidence about the fake news and attack ads targeting the opposition leader during that very polarised and disputed election. Our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, joins us now from Nairobi. Lindsay.
Kathy, nowhere have the revelations about Cambridge Analytica created more furore than here in Kenya. President Uhuru Kenyatta and his party employed Cambridge Analytica in the 2013 campaign and again in their presidential campaign last year, although it was only a week ago that they admitted that. Now, as you'll see in the story we're about to show, Kenyan elections are frequently violent. There are some scenes viewers might not like, but they are also very dangerous in the sense of polarizing people here along ethnic lines. And the Kenyans I've been speaking to say that that's what they are most worried about, the impact of the techniques which Cambridge Analytica and other similar companies use on such a fragile democracy. Kenyans queued to vote on August the 8th last year. The country divided politically and ethnically. The memory of 2007, when more than 1,000 were killed in election violence, always present. The 2017 poll pitted long-term opposition leader Raila Odinga against the incumbent, President Uhuru Kenyatta, who won again, with a little help from Cambridge Analytica.
The Kenyatta campaign, which we ran in 2013 and 2017 for Kenyatta. And then we'd write all the speeches and we'd stage the whole thing. So just about every element of his campaign.
I think that's the next step of research.
Robert Mathuri is studying the impact of social media during the campaign.
The problem here would be fake news.
Yes.
Or disinformation.
Negative ads were spread on Facebook and other platforms by advocates for both main parties, but most attacked Raila Odinga, Kenyatta's opponent. Kenyans were micro-targeted with specific messages, mainly by WhatsApp. Jubilee, Kenyatta's party, has not said that this was the expertise for which they contracted Cambridge Analytica, but it is a tactic in which the company specialises.
Most of the people that we've asked in a survey that we've just concluded say they hadn't given any form of consent and they didn't have previous relationships with these political aspirants that were asking them to come and vote for them.
So where could that data have been mined from?
Right now, our hypothesis is that there was data from different government registries. So there's the Register of Person holds data on people. The IEBC holds data.
That's the Election
on,
Commission.
Exactly, holds data on voting. The telecoms holds data on subscribers, the numbers, for instance. The messages were very specific, identifying you by name, by where your county is, where your constituency, your ward, and asking you to come and vote on a particular day for a particular person in your exact polling station.
None of which is illegal, because there is no data protection law in Kenya. Nairobi's iHub. Up to 8 million Kenyans are on Facebook and even more on WhatsApp. Out of an electorate of nearly 20 million, political messages spread quickly.
WhatsApp is perhaps the most powerful social media tool in Kenya. And what people would typically do is like, oh, if I like this, or if it agrees with me, or I want to share it to my many 17, 18 different groups, I just send it to all of them and say, as received. Then I don't have to take responsibility for it. And then there's also a whole lot of people, our parents and our grandparents, who are also on WhatsApp, and they believe if it's out there, then it's true.
Before the vote, an apocalyptic attack ad called The Real Raila appeared at the top of internet searches in Kenya, alongside one called Uhuru for Us. It wasn't clear who had made them, nor who had paid for their search engine prominence.
The Real Raila website and the Uhuru for Us website share the same Google Analytics tracking code. And this is also a code that is shared with Harris Media, LLC.
Harris Media, based in Texas, is the publicist of choice for the Israeli President Benjamin Netanyahu and right-wing US causes. They haven't said that they worked for the Kenyatta campaign. And Kenyan law has no requirement to reveal who paid for political advertising.
That's a legal loophole that exists primarily because of the state of technology in the country and the state of the conversation about technology in the country. There should be some kind of qualms about taking advantage of that kind of loophole for profit, and especially in a fragile democracy in a fragile context.
More than 50 people were killed in post-election violence. In the end, the poll was annulled by the Supreme Court because of problems in the count. The opposition boycotted the rerun. In the last 3 weeks, the old foes, President Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga, shook hands, lowering the political temperature. Everything's back to normal now, but Kenyans are already dreading the next election season, wondering what kind of dirty digital campaign their leaders will dream up, and with whose help. Yesterday, I sat down with the opposition leader, Raila Odinga, and I asked him what impact he thought Cambridge Analytica, Harris Media, and these kinds of digital techniques had on the Kenyan election.
We were probably one of the first guinea pigs in this experiment in Kenya. In 2013, we were new to this kind of thing. We really didn't know how to deal with it. But then we saw them again come back in 2016. And this time I think they had perfected the art of manipulating data. Because all of a sudden we saw on the screens, television screens, some very strange adverts, which people didn't even know their source, where they were coming from. And then on the Facebook page, if you ever opened the Kenyan Facebook page, you are immediately introduced to those negative campaigns. who is Raila Odinga, or the real Raila Odinga.
And the real Raila Odinga in those ads was a very evil man.
Very, very evil man. The devil incarnate.
But that wasn't Cambridge Analytica, that was this company Harris Media. What did you manage to find out about Harris Media?
We really don't know the difference between Harris Media and Cambridge Analytica, because we think they're working for the same client, that there's some kind of relationship between them. We've not established exactly the difference. But the net result is that this was a very negative campaign.
What difference do you think the prevalence of social media in Kenya made to the negative campaigning? Because in Kenya we've seen a massive increase in social media use in the last 5 years or so, certainly since the last election.
Yes, Kenya, in fact, is leading the continent in terms of penetration, social media penetration, use of social media. And I think they've just found the right environment here that they needed, sufficient raw materials for this kind of propaganda. And I'm also very disappointed that Facebook agreed to cooperate in this very clandestine enterprise. I have been very disappointed, and we are actually contemplating legal action against the Facebook.
Here in Kenya?
We will do it outside Kenya.
Do it outside Kenya. How will that work?
So we will have lawyers from Kenya and also from outside Kenya dealing with this matter.
What about Cambridge Analytica themselves? Would you consider taking legal action against them?
Certainly.
Here in Kenya, there are no laws which stop political parties or anybody else for that matter from mining people's data. Surely the problem is that the law in Kenya is not adequate.
There I agree with you, certainly, that there's a gap in terms of legal infrastructure in the country. And this is also a lesson to our legislators, that that loophole needs to be closed.
Some people would say that you also had access to data illegally, because your party was also micro-targeting voters, and that actually you're just complaining about this because the opposition's propagandists were better than your propagandists.
This is not true. You need to understand that we did the campaign under very difficult circumstances here. First, you need to know that our own consultants, the Aristotle group of companies, the officials here, 2 of them, were arrested and deported from this country without any reason being given at all.
What is it about Kenya which makes it particularly vulnerable to this kind of campaigning and these kind of consultants who are working, as we've seen in America and in Nigeria and various places?
Certainly very vulnerable, and the introduction of this system, which is being brought by the Cambridge Analytica, itself portends very badly for electoral democracy in the continent. And I don't think that is not a danger for Africa. It's a danger universally. If this development is allowed to succeed, then there will be no point in having elections, because it is not going to be the will of the people. The people are going to be turned like robots, so that they vote in accordance with how they are manipulated to vote. That, in my view, is not the meaning or the essence of democracy.
Well, we put those allegations by Mr. Odinga to Facebook, who said, "We categorically deny allegations of political cooperation with one party over another in the presidential elections. or support for Facebook campaigns by Cambridge Analytica in the 2017 Kenyan election. It should also be said that just before the vote, Facebook very interestingly put up on their site some tools which Kenyan voters could use to try and distinguish between fake news and the real thing. So it's quite clear that Facebook were very aware that this was a problem in the Kenyan elections, and they did try and do something to counter it just before the vote.
Well, Lindsay, you focused very much on Kenya in your reports tonight, but are you sensing that there is deep unease about Cambridge Analytica in other African countries?
Yes, I think so. They were involved in Nigeria, allegedly for Goodluck Jonathan, who was the last president, and there was an attack ad put out against President Buhari, the now President Buhari, so it should be said that this didn't work. But it was a similar, very apocalyptic kind of ad that we saw in the real Ryla. And I think that one of the problems in Nigeria, Kenya and in many other African countries is that there really is no legal framework for dealing with this, because the technology has sped far ahead of the law. And Africa people are on the internet a lot. People send money by internet. People use it all the time. It's tremendously important in people's everyday lives. And unless there are new data protection laws coming in, as well as campaign transparency, these kind of issues are only going to grow.
Lindsay, thanks very much. Some quite apocalyptic lighting momentarily there as well. Thank you.
Theresa May has backed her political secretary, Stephen Parkinson, despite calls for him to be sacked for allegedly outing a whistleblower as gay. Brexit campaigner Shamir Sani told this programme that Vote Leave cheated during the EU referendum campaign. In response, Mr Parkinson, a political advisor at Number 10, as well as denying he had done anything wrong, published a personal statement revealing details of a relationship he'd had with Mr Sani. Here's our political correspondent, Michael Crick.
The man who ran Vote Leave, Dominic Cummings, stayed inside this morning, filming us, filming him. No response when we knocked on his door. Mr Cummings has written an 8,000-word blog, but none of the Vote Leave figures accused of cheating during the referendum have defended themselves yet on camera or microphone.
Please leave your message after the tone.
Hello, Mr Cummings. It's Michael Crick here from Channel 4 News. I'm actually outside your house at the moment. I believe you're inside.
This is sort of the problem with the EU, the lack of accountability, the lack of democracy, the lack of permeability.
Vote Leave's national organiser, Stephen Parkinson, here backing Brexit 2 years ago, is now Theresa May's political secretary. And today, MPs accused him over the weekend of outing the whistleblower Shamir Sani as gay.
How is it remotely acceptable that when a young whistleblower exposes compelling evidence of law-breaking by the Leave campaign implicating staff at Number 10, that one of those named, instead of addressing the allegations made, issues an officially sanctioned statement outing the whistleblower as gay and thereby putting his family in Pakistan in danger? It's a disgrace, Prime Minister. Absolutely. You need to do something about it.
She said Parkinson's statement about Sani had been a personal one, not from Number 10.
We do recognise that for some, being outed as gay is difficult because of their family and circumstances. And what I want to see is a world where everybody is able to be confident in their sexuality and doesn't have to worry about such things.
Angela Eagle told her to axe Parkinson.
You should sack him.
No, I'm sorry, that is not what I should be doing, and my political secretary does a very good job as my political secretary, and as I have said, any statements that have been made were personal statements.
MPs will debate the Vote Leave allegations at length tomorrow. Meanwhile, today, lawyers released details of what they've sent the Electoral Commission based on evidence from 3 whistleblowers.
You can't come back from Brexit. So if we're to, if this country is on a path of an irreversible decision, we really should be confident that this is that the basis of that decision came from a free and fair vote. And what this evidence does is it calls into question whether it was free and fair.
Chris Wylie tomorrow will address MPs on the Culture and Media Select Committee about vote leave and his allegations about Cambridge Analytica. Vote leave, Dominic Cummings and Stephen Parkinson all deny the allegations by him and other whistleblowers and say they did nothing wrong.
Michael Crick reporting there.
The Facebook founder, Mark Zuckerberg, has refused to appear before MPs to answer questions about how personal data belonging to millions of Facebook users was gathered. One of his deputies will attend instead. Meanwhile, a whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica, the company at the centre of the controversy, has been giving evidence. Our technology correspondent Rory Kettlin-Jones reports.
He's the founder of the social media giant facing its biggest crisis. But Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want to talk about it to MPs. He's turned down an invitation to answer questions about data privacy and offered to send one of his senior executives instead. That didn't get a good response.
I think it is absolutely astonishing that Mark Zuckerberg is not prepared to submit himself to questioning in front of a parliamentary or congressional hearing, given that these are questions of the fundamental importance and concern to Facebook users.
This man was happy to talk to MPs. Christopher Wylie is the whistleblower who's alleged that Cambridge Analytica used Facebook data in its work to elect Donald Trump. But much of his evidence centred on the EU referendum campaign and the way data companies may have been involved. These are the complex links described by Christopher Wylie. He says Cambridge Analytica was closely tied to a Canadian firm, Aggregate-IQ, which had access to the Facebook data held by Cambridge Analytica. We know that this firm worked for both the official Vote Leave campaign and got a substantial sum from Believe, a group set up by a young fashion student. But Christopher Wylie says the two groups coordinated their spending, and that was illegal. Mr. Wylie said even as a Eurosceptic, this felt wrong to him.
And you cannot call yourself a leaver, you cannot call yourself somebody who believes in British law and win by breaking British law in order to achieve that goal.
And is that your belief as well, that the law was broken in this?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Cambridge Analytica said Mr. Wylie left the firm in 2014. Aggregate-IQ denies its link to the company. Vote Leave insists it won the referendum campaign fairly and ethically. Meanwhile, one report says Mark Zuckerberg will testify before the US Congress. He may be more comfortable in Washington than Westminster. Rory Kettlin-Jones, BBC News.
Now, last week, whistleblower Christopher Wylie revealed to Channel 4 News how data was harvested from millions of Facebook accounts by his former employers, Cambridge Analytica. Today, he gave evidence to MPs in a lengthy 4-hour session in which he claimed the Brexit referendum result was cheated by pro-Leave groups and that the now suspended boss of Cambridge Analytica, Alexander Nix, had lied to MPs on the Culture Committee. But while Wylie showed up in Parliament, Facebook boss Mark Zuckerberg has said he won't make it across the Atlantic. Fatima Manji reports.
The man with the pink hair who's hit the world's headlines. Christopher Wylie is the whistleblower who helped uncover the operations of Cambridge Analytica.
Is that immediately recording then?
It's created scandal worldwide, a crisis at Facebook, and triggered investigations on both sides of the Atlantic. Today, he gave evidence to Parliament's Media Select Committee.
It felt very much like a privatized colonizing operation. You would go into a country that has underdeveloped civic institutions, you would exploit that, and then make money off of it.
We do a lot more than that.
That's his description of Cambridge Analytica. And he accuses Alexander Nix, the now suspended CEO of the company, seen here in our undercover footage, of lying to MPs about how the company used Facebook data.
I think Alexander Nix's comments to your committee were exceptionally misleading. And frankly, I would say not only misleading, but I think they were dishonest.
Alexander Nix hasn't yet responded to this allegation. Mr. Wylie also says he believes cheating swayed the EU referendum result. He's accused pro-Brexit groups of illegally coordinating to get around spending controls.
It makes me so angry because a lot of people supported Leave because they believe in, the application of British law and British sovereignty, and to irrevocably alter the constitutional settlement of this country on fraud is a mutilation of the constitutional settlement of this country. And you cannot call yourself a leaver, you cannot call yourself somebody who believes in British law and win by breaking British law in order to achieve that goal.
A quick recap of the companies involved here. SCL is the parent company of Cambridge Analytica. Mr. Wiley has claimed that the Canadian-registered firm, Aggregate IQ, or AIQ, was effectively a franchise for both companies, and that it used the databases of Cambridge Analytica in its work for the Vote Leave campaign, Believe, as well as the DUP and Veterans for Britain.
It was, quote, totally illegal. But they found it amusing because you have to remember that this is a company that has gone around the world and undermined democratic institutions in all kinds of countries, right? They could care less as to whether or not their work is compliant because they like to win. This is not some council race or a by-election. This is an irreversible change to the constitutional settlement of this country. So that's, first of all, that's why it matters. And if you cheat on an exam, you get a fail. If you cheat on the Olympics, you lose your medal, right? You shouldn't win by cheating.
Vote Leave has denied illegally coordinating with other campaign groups to avoid spending caps, while lawyers for AIQ say they've never entered into a contract with Cambridge Analytica and never knowingly been involved in any illegal activity. And while this 4-hour marathon of testimony was ongoing inside Parliament, with some explosive allegations being made, whoever is now running Cambridge Analytica's Twitter account was responding, saying Christopher Wiley was a part-time contractor who left in July 2014, and he has no direct knowledge of our work or practices since then. Christopher Wiley also told MPs he'd been subject to legal intimidation for whistleblowing, most of all from Facebook. Although Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg has now agreed to appear before Congress, he won't testify before MPs in Parliament. The committee's chair has described that as astonishing and urged him to think again.
Well, when this programme secretly filmed bosses at Cambridge Analytica, they boasted of using Facebook data to help put Donald Trump in the White House. After she lost to Trump, Hillary Clinton told us she'd faced a massive propaganda campaign. So could it have been Cambridge Analytica's operation that swung the 2016 election? The company says publicly the idea is absurd. From New York, I'm joined by Jennifer Palmieri, who is communications director for Hillary Clinton in the presidential race and has written a book about the campaign and women in power. Jennifer Palmieri, let's start with that question. Do you fear that Cambridge Analytica, by harvesting this Facebook data, might have swung it for Trump?
You know, we only lost the election by 70,000 votes in 3 states, so any one factor could have caused the loss, and Cambridge Analytica, I count as one of those that could have done it. I certainly know that when I sat across the table after the election at a post-election forum with the Trump staff, including the digital staff, they were quite proud of their efforts and lauded them as having given them the victory, and also said, I would note, that the Clinton campaign never saw it coming.
Well, I mean, of course, in your book, you say, and I quote, there was something about Hillary Clinton that folks just didn't trust. So, I mean, many would say it was nothing to do with Russian interference in the election campaign or the alleged dark arts of Cambridge Analytica, but it was just that people just didn't like her.
So I think that there's two things here. First of all, you know, I think the Russian interference in the campaign and Cambridge Analytica's efforts that, you know, may be more connected than we even realize played a part. But what my book is about and what it seeks to answer is what women do now after, and what lessons can we draw from what Hillary Clinton experienced. And that's different than saying what lessons can we draw from what Hillary Clinton did. And what, you know, my perspective is I worked for the first woman nominee to run for president of a major party in America, and I worked in 20 years at the highest levels of American politics, a very male-dominated field. So I have a sense of what the obstacles women in power face, women in leadership positions face, and I also have a sense from my own life how I managed to succeed in spite of those obstacles. And that's what the book's about. And what I found with Hillary was and I think this is true of a lot of women of the baby boomer generation in the United States, that we're always stepping out of the roles that women traditionally have, was something you'd hear said about her was, there's just something about her I just don't like, or there's just something about her I just don't trust. And that was true, by the way, in the 1992 campaign. I watched videos of her from that election and people being interviewed about her from 92, 25 years ago, well before emails or healthcare or anything with the White House. And that was people's reaction. And it wasn't mean-spirited and it wasn't sexist. It was, she vexed them. They just didn't know what to make of her. And I think that's what happens with women and with ambition and women in power is people have a lot of questions about, they're just not sure what to make of it. And that's an obstacle that women who are running for election now still have to live with. And my advice to those women is, keep a good attitude about it. We didn't make this, nobody made the world. We're inherited it. We're all doing the best that we can, but understand that it's there.
I'll come back to the women in power point in a minute. I just want to finish on this data issue. I mean, Cambridge Analytica harvested, or is alleged to have harvested, Facebook deny it, data from 50 million Facebook users to do these target attack ads. But your campaign also used vast amount of data to target people. So what's the difference between what you did and what the Trump campaign did?
Two things. One was ours wasn't stolen, so it appears that yes, I'm here. Can you not hear me? I can hear you. The data wasn't, it seems that the original data that Cambridge Analytica was working from allegedly was from a breach. And also, but what was, I think, diabolical about what the Trump campaign did is they were sending often, racial messages that were designed to suppress the vote. Things that they did not want to say publicly or out loud. And that is not what our campaign did. Anything that our campaign was promoting online or through our digital tools is the same thing that you would hear our candidate or our staff say out loud publicly.
I mean, Cambridge Analytica denied that the data was stolen. But just on the broader point you've been making about why America didn't elect its first female president, and you write that they didn't trust an intelligent, ambitious, capable woman in a position of power. When do you think America will trust such a woman?
I didn't say that's why they lost. I said that is, I think that's why people have these questions about women and ambition. And when will that change? I think it's changing now. This a sort of remarkable thing happened after Trump won, which was, rather than feeling devastated, a lot of women who supported Hillary Clinton or didn't support Trump chose to feel empowered. I think what we saw was
on that,
we play by a certain set of rules and they're not working, so we're going to change them.
sorry to
and
interrupt.
That's what the book's about.
We're right out of time, but on that empowering note, Jennifer Palmieri, thank you very much. John.
Last night, we reported from Kenya on the impact of data mining, fake news, and the intervention of firms such as Cambridge Analytica and its parent company, SCL, in the contentious 2017 election there. Yesterday, our international editor, Lindsay Hilsum, spoke to the leader of the opposition, Raila Odinga.
I'm also very disappointed that Facebook agreed to cooperate in this very clandestine enterprise. I have been very disappointed, and we are actually contemplating legal action against Facebook.
So, did dirty tricks and data harvesting play a part in the victory of President Uhuru Kenyatta? Today, Lindsay sat down with the Secretary General of Kenya's governing Jubilee Party, Raphael Tuju. He ran the victorious campaign for President Kenyatta.
What role did Cambridge Analytica play in the campaign for President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election?
First of all, I must be a stranger to Cambridge Analytica, but if you're talking about their
SCL, their parent company.
Yes, so we're talking about SCL.
Tell me what SCL, the parent company of Cambridge Analytica, did during the campaign to re-elect President Kenyatta.
Well, we did a lot of research, especially focus group discussions, and they were responsible for looking at focus group discussion results, which fed into production of communication materials like posters and billboards.
What about the data mining? Because that's what they're best known for. That's their unique expertise.
Well, which is a mischief that I think you guys are trying to deal with, and I can assure you that even if they offered that kind of service, we would not look for it, because the dynamics of voter behavior in this country is completely different from what you'd have in your countries.
Kenyans were targeted very specifically, particularly on WhatsApp. Are you saying that you just did that with no assistance?
It wasn't necessary, because we do understand our the profile of the political arena in which we're operating. We mapped the country based on counties, how the counties have more or less voted in the past.
What about Harris Media? Did you pay Harris Media to make these very virulent attack ads on President Kenyatta's opponent, Raila Odinga?
No, and we'd have no reason at all to do it.
Do you know who did?
We didn't bother to find out. I wouldn't know.
That surprises me, because these were inflammatory advertisements which were widely seen across Kenya. Surely you should have been trying to find, you must be very worried about who is making these ads and sending them across your citizens.
I saw some ads which were very adversarial to our own presidential candidate, President Uhuru. But knowing the penetration of social media and what effect it would have in voter behavior modification, we would not be bothered by it.
That surprises me. There are 12 million WhatsApp users, there are 8 million Facebook users. This is not insignificant.
Modification of behavior is a very complex thing, it's a continuum, and I would not have really in any sense invested any money in that sort of data mining and having communication to respond to that.
It was a very acrimonious and polarizing campaign with very inflammatory language. Are you ashamed of it?
It's very unfortunate that we had that kind of campaign. This was not the first time. I was in a campaign process in 2007, which resulted in post-election violence. That was probably even more virulent than what we had in this last campaign. We are, as a party, hoping that we can make our politics, make that transition from the very ethnic, polarized campaign to a more policy-driven and issue-driven campaign.
So how can you allow somebody like Harris Media to put out an ad which was widely circulated on social media and many millions of Kenyans saw it? How can you let that happen when you know that that may incite violence and is highly inflammatory?
We did not, but let me just give you an example.
You let it happen, you didn't stop it.
Well, we had no way of stopping it, because we don't even have the address. I mean, you know what it is.
I have the address, I can give it to you.
Well, but it's post facto at this particular moment, and I would not even bother, but let me just tell you, and hasten to tell you this. Was there a very acrimonious campaign, even racial, in the United States? Even racial in the United Kingdom? You do have issues in politics, and very, very polarizing issues.
Raphael Tuju, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Harris Media have not responded to our questions about their alleged involvement in the Kenyan elections last year. Now, last week, this programme exposed how Cambridge Analytica claimed to have intervened, often secretly, in elections around the world. Now the secrets are unravelling. An undercover reporter for Channel 4 News posed as a fixer for a wealthy client hoping to get candidates elected in Sri Lanka. Last week, that country's Prime Minister admitted meeting the firm, though he said he had declined to use them. A row continues in India, where the governing BJP and the Congress Party both accuse the other of hiring Cambridge Analytica associate SCL India. In Kenya, opposition leader Raila Odinga is considering legal action against Cambridge Analytica and Facebook following his electoral defeat last year. The Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago has opened an investigation into SCL, Cambridge Analytica and other linked firms. Now from Mexico, our Latin America correspondent Guillermo Galdos. He reports on the demise of the deal to harvest data from 1 million citizens, cancelled after Channel 4 News began investigating.
This year, Latin America's second biggest democracy is up for grabs. Mexico is a land of bitter political memes, assassinations and dirty money. And with elections set for July, the stakes could not be higher. Into this stepped Cambridge Analytica, a company not currently registered to work with any political party in Mexico.
In Mexico, we are about to be involved.
But it's dangerous, no? Mexico also?
Well, because the narco-traficante, there's so much drug violence in Mexico, and drug money is in politics.
Yes.
And corruption is everywhere. So in Mexico, yeah, if you get on the wrong side of someone powerful, you could be killed.
And that's why Channel 4 News decided to come to Mexico to investigate the work of Cambridge Analytica in Latin America's second biggest economy. We have confirmed that Cambridge Analytica bosses met with several Mexican political parties in an attempt to secure a major contract. We also know that they opened an office right here in Mexico City.
In early 2017, Ariel Carro was head of operations for Cambridge Analytica in Mexico, according to her LinkedIn profile. She began to pursue local data scientists. Her company's plan, she said, was to be the brains behind the Mexican election.
80,000 people come and meet.
Last September, Alexander Nix came to a technology conference in Mexico City.
Blanket advertising, the idea that millions of Americans...
In his speech, he gave little indication of his company's plans in Mexico, but a source told Channel 4 News that the ruling PRI party did work with Cambridge Analytica until January this year. As our investigation suggested, Nix was active in Mexico.
On Saturday, we're going to Mexico for
this week?
11 hours. Just going to go and collect some tequila and some tacos. Don't close the engines, man.
So you have private planes you're wanting? Or?
No. I'm going to see my client. Right. He wants to have the same as you. They want to do a handshake and just sign some documents. So they want to sign with me. So I fly over for that.
One company did work with the data gurus in Mexico, Pig.Gi, an app which offers free mobile internet for user interaction. Pig.Gi has over 1 million users in Mexico, or 1% of the population. In June last year, Pig.Gi agreed a prospective deal with Cambridge Analytica.
Well, Cambridge Analytica is a company we've known for a while, and they have some of the best data scientists in the world that I've met, and they have helped us to develop a little bit of what we call a recommendation engine. And so it takes into account a history of what someone has viewed and suggests new content. And so in the end, that's really valuable data as well, is understanding really what the person, what drives them, what makes them click on something.
Pig.Gi said they are not involved in politics.
We've looked at it, and a lot of the political parties have approached us. But up until now, we've decided to stay away from that, and but we're not doing any political campaigns.
But last July, Pig.Gi did carry out a political survey, which was published in the local media.
Most Pig.Gi users live in poor neighborhoods like this one and have no Wi-Fi at home.
Bueno, yo descubrí Pig.Gi por medio de Facebook y creo un usuario. Registró mi número telefónico y mi correo.
Alexis answers quizzes on the app to win Pig.Gi coins and uses them to buy free data packages. The only cost is that data.
Igual hice un error no leer las letras chiquitas, pero pues hasta el momento pues no he tenido yo algún problema con eso.
A lawyer said Pig.Gi's terms and conditions did allow information to be shared. And a source told Channel 4 News that Cambridge Analytica had access to the data Pig.Gi collected.
En México, quien cambia una elección son aquellos millennials que están en zonas rurales, en zonas pobres o en ciudades en un nivel de pobreza alto, son quienes van a cambiar la elección. Por eso es que están regalando Wi-Fi. Ahí obtienen la inteligencia.
It's less than 4 months until Mexico's presidential election. Attacks on social media are everywhere. Cambridge Analytica told us it has explored commercial and political opportunities in Mexico, but has not worked on any election campaigns. The company is not registered to work with any political party.
Lo que está pasando aquí en México y por qué sí hay un patrón similar a las elecciones que se han dado en Estados Unidos y se han dado en otros países, es porque se está tratando de influir en la opinión pública a través de información que se mueve artificialmente, a través de usando bots, usando influenciadores e información pagada en redes sociales que tienen un mismo sentido.
After Channel 4 News broadcast an interview with a Cambridge Analytica whistleblower, Pig.Gi contacted us again. They said their deal with the British company was never implemented, and added Pig.Gi would not work with them until the legal position on the use of data is clear, and said they always comply with Mexican law. In Colombia, which has an election in May, the government has blocked the Pig.Gi app over possible links to Cambridge Analytica. We tried to track down anyone who worked for Cambridge Analytica in Mexico. At their offices, we were told they had left. A repeat routine, maybe, already seen elsewhere.
No one even knew they were there. They just ghosted in, did the work, ghosted out.
Less than 2 years ago, Cambridge Analytica had Mexico in their sights. By early 2018, they seemed to have disappeared. Yet in Mexico's upcoming election, familiar tactics live on. This time, have the electoral ghosts vanished before the race even started?
No shortage of ghosts. Guillermo Galdes reporting.
I've been